mystery interstellar object that was spotted by astronomers last week.
Astronomers have just detected another something out there blazing into our solar system at like 152,000 miles an hour.
The discovery of 3I/Atlas was already unusual, an interstellar visitor slipping into our solar system for a fleeting passage, but the confirmation that followed struck harder than anyone had anticipated. What astronomers had whispered about, what theorists had warned might one day happen, was no longer speculation. The data aligned, the models converged, and the verdict came with sobering weight. The trajectory, the velocity, and the composition of this object carried implications that no one wanted to accept. It was not just a frozen relic from another star system gliding harmlessly by. It was something that echoed the fears that had hovered in the background of every discussion since the first interstellar bodies were found. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. When the confirmation was made public, the numbers were clear enough for even casual observers to understand. The path of 3I/Atlas was not a benign arc through the outer solar system. It intersected, deviated, and resisted easy explanation. Its speed was extreme, beyond what solar gravity alone could produce. Its brightness fluctuated in ways that suggested violent outgassing, fragmentation, or some interior process that made it far from inert. Instead of presenting itself as an icy, quiet visitor, it behaved erratically, almost deliberately, as if it carried within it more energy and instability than expected. For those watching closely, this was the fulfillment of an anxiety long nurtured, that an interstellar traveler would not simply be a curiosity, but a potential herald of disruption. The implications began to spread in ripples. First came the astronomers, who parsed the raw data with expressions that shifted from fascination to unease. They had cataloged comets and asteroids for centuries, had grown comfortable with orbital predictions and long-term models that kept Earth secure within its habitable cradle. But 3I/Atlas mocked the idea of certainty. Its origin point traced back to an unfamiliar region beyond the nearest known stellar systems, a place not yet charted in detail. Its composition, gleaned from spectroscopic analysis, bore signatures of molecules rarely stable in ordinary comets. Volatile elements shimmered in its tail, elements that on Earth are carefully contained in labs because of their instability. Then came the question of intent, or at least the appearance of it. No one suggested outright intelligence, not in official channels, but the whispers were unavoidable. Why did the body's rotation seem to align with solar vectors in a way that maximized its shedding of material? Why did its brightness surge exactly when observation windows widened? Coincidence was possible, but the pattern tugged at imaginations already primed by science fiction, and by the eerie precedent of Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor that had baffled scientists years earlier. Unlike that enigmatic shard, however, 3I/Atlas left no room for comfort in ambiguity. It displayed danger in measurable terms. Its mass, even fragmented, was enough to cause regional devastation should it encounter Earth. Its orbit, though not a direct collision course, carried it uncomfortably close, threading between planetary paths with razor-thin margins. The fear that surfaced was not simply about impact. Humanity has long prepared itself, at least in imagination, for the scenario of a rogue rock hurtling toward the planet. Defense systems, asteroid redirection plans, and impact simulations filled libraries and training modules. But 3I/Atlas hinted at something broader. It was not just an asteroid, it was an emissary of the galaxy, a piece of alien chemistry, a potential biological or energetic unknown arriving uninvited. Scientists who studied panspermia theories, a concept that life could spread through space on rocks and ice, now confronted the unnerving possibility that this visitor was a carrier. Its glowing halo, shedding microscopic dust, could brush Earth's upper atmosphere. What would such contact mean? Would it seed new life, or unleash contaminants against which terrestrial biology had no defense? The weight of that fear pressed hardest on those who remembered how little control humanity truly had. Telescopes could track, equations could predict, but the cosmos delivered surprises that no calculation could fully tame. In the past, interstellar objects had passed without incident, but confirmation of the dangers inherent in 3I/Atlas broke that fragile pattern of safety. It meant that our solar system was not isolated. It was permeable, vulnerable, exposed to whatever the wider galaxy carried in its currents. That awareness struck like a psychological blow. It was not just about astronomy anymore. It was about security, about the fragility of human civilization on its pale blue dot. Yet even as dread coiled, fascination did not fade. The very fact that such an object had entered meant that humanity could, in theory, study it. Laboratories scrambled to model its material composition, racing to understand what made it so volatile. Was it packed with frozen gases never before seen outside controlled experiments? Did it contain isotopes formed only in the hearts of supernovae? Every answer added layers to the fear, because each strange reading suggested that this was not a harmless ice ball, but something forged under conditions alien to our solar system. In its complexity, it carried the story of another world, another system, perhaps even another kind of planetary evolution. The debates grew more intense as the confirmation spread through scientific communities. Some argued that it was reckless to focus on the dangers. Knowledge was the greater prize. Others countered that knowledge without precaution was fatal arrogance. The recognition that Earth had no veto over such arrivals hung over every exchange. No barrier existed between here and the interstellar medium. No wall could be built to keep such travelers away. The only option was to confront them, to track, to study, to prepare. That reality fed the sensation that humanity had stepped across an invisible threshold. The age of planetary isolation was over. The unsettling truth was that nothing about 3I/Atlas broke the laws of physics. Everything it did could be explained by natural forces, but the combination of those forces created a portrait of menace. A body moving at such speed, with such composition, intersecting so precisely with planetary orbits, was enough to wake the survival instincts buried deep in the species. That confirmation was what everyone had feared. Not that an alien spacecraft would arrive, not that an immediate apocalypse would descend, but that the universe itself would remind us how fragile our place was. That reminder came in the shape of a streaking interstellar object, a visitor carrying the weight of the unknown. What unfolded in the weeks of observation felt like a tightening coil. Every new image sharpened its features. Every new calculation reduced the margin of error. The pattern of fear was not irrational. It was rooted in the sheer improbability of safety when dealing with forces so large and so uncontrollable. It was the recognition that humanity was a passenger in a system open to the galaxy's debris, and that sooner or later, one of these visitors might not pass harmlessly by. 3I/Atlas was the embodiment of that recognition, the living proof of the warnings that astronomers had tucked into the corners of their presentations for decades. The confirmation that this was the event everyone feared did not come with explosions or alarms, but with the cold, precise language of orbital dynamics and spectroscopic graphs. Yet that was enough. Numbers can wound as effectively as fire when they outline a risk that cannot be deflected by willpower alone. The fear was real because it was rational, because it was measurable, because it was written in the stars themselves. 3I/Atlas had crossed into our solar system, and in doing so had crossed into our collective imagination as the proof that the universe is not gentle, not distant, but immediate and uncompromising. The confirmation surrounding 3I/Atlas did not unfold like a sudden flash of catastrophe, but more like the slow, undeniable tightening of a grip. What had begun as a faint point of light against the star fields became the most scrutinized traveler in modern astronomy. As its unusual trajectory and alarming chemical profile solidified under relentless observation, humanity was confronted not just with the fact of its passage, but with the truth about what such arrivals mean. The event became more than science. It was a revelation of scale, of cosmic vulnerability, of the sheer unpredictability of the universe. The reality was that 3I/Atlas did not exist in isolation. By its very arrival, it reminded observers that interstellar space is not an empty gulf, but a living current of material, some of it benign and some of it, as in this case, carrying implications that unsettle every certainty we cling to. The measurements revealed a complex body, layered in frozen gases, riddled with reactive compounds, and shearing apart under solar heating in ways unlike any comet cataloged before. Its mass shifted unevenly as it shed fragments, throwing off predictions. Telescopes scrambled nightly to catch up to its unpredictable displays. The object was a messenger, though no one could decide if the message was opportunity or threat. At the heart of the fear was the stark awareness that nothing in our defensive imagination had prepared for this specific reality. Plans for asteroid diversion focused on objects within the solar family, predictable in composition and behavior. Those simulations assumed certain constants, densities within known ranges, ice sublimation that followed familiar patterns, spin rates that could be measured and compensated for. 3I/Atlas shredded those assumptions with every passing observation. Its material seemed to shift phase unexpectedly. Jets burst from cracks with force strong enough to alter its spin in hours rather than months. This was not a simple rock barreling along a clean orbit. This was a volatile shard from an alien system carrying within it the chaotic signature of a history Earth had never known. The implications for planetary science alone were staggering. Here was direct evidence that planetary formation beyond our star system produced materials and structures previously considered improbable. Some of the gases identified in its coma could only have condensed under pressures and temperatures unlike anything in the solar nebula. To study them was to peer into a different genesis, to glimpse how diverse planetary systems might be. But with that discovery came the unsettling recognition that our models of stability might not apply universally. If these compounds form naturally elsewhere, then instability might be more common than stability. Entire systems could seed their neighbors with dangerous wanderers, their remnants flung outward like sparks from a forge. This line of thought pushed scientists to imagine a broader context. If our solar system had already been visited by two confirmed interstellar bodies in such a short span, first the enigmatic shard that had slipped by years earlier, and now 3I/Atlas. Then perhaps encounters were not rare anomalies, but the beginning of a recognition that they are a constant reality. The galaxy itself might be threaded with such objects, silent but potentially disruptive, traveling unseen until one passes close enough to catch the sun's reflection. The fear then expanded beyond this single traveler. If one of them carries the power to alter planetary safety margins, then countless others may one day follow. That was the weight of the confirmation. It was not simply about the immediate threat posed by 3I/Atlas, but about the unveiling of a new cosmic condition. The solar system is porous, exposed to the drifting shards of alien birthplaces. The reassuring boundary of the Oort cloud was no shield. The space between stars was not a void, but a thoroughfare. Every future generation would now live with the knowledge that such bodies could arrive without warning, each carrying unknown chemistry, unknown trajectories, unknown potential for disruption. The comfort of thinking of Earth as an island, buffered by astronomical distance, was dissolved by the fiery trail of this interstellar intruder. The confirmation also ignited cultural reverberations that rippled far beyond observatories. In philosophical circles, 3I/Atlas became the new symbol of cosmic humility. It underscored the fact that humanity's sense of mastery was partial, fragile, easily broken by a rock no larger than a small mountain drifting in from the dark between stars. Artists painted it as a harbinger, a luminous scar across the night sky representing the intrusion of the unknown into the everyday. Writers seized upon it as metaphor for all uninvited truths, the sudden arrival of realities that cannot be reasoned away. Spiritual voices cast it as a reminder of impermanence, of vulnerability written into the very structure of existence. The cultural fascination thrived because 3I/Atlas was not abstract. It could be seen, tracked, charted. Its luminous tail glowed across images shared nightly online. The public, normally distant from the cold language of astronomical research, could look at those photographs and feel the immediacy of its presence. Here was something that did not belong to our solar family, yet it burned visibly in our skies, a luminous intruder on our doorstep. That immediacy turned scientific fear into collective awe and dread. It was not a hypothetical scenario, not a computer-generated simulation. It was a body hurtling past Earth at thousands of kilometers per second, and everyone knew it would not be the last. The confirmation also sharpened the debate around humanity's role in space. If the solar system is open to interstellar arrivals, then passivity is not a safe posture. Some voices insisted that greater investment in planetary defense was mandatory, that telescopes must be multiplied, that deep space sensors must sweep the void constantly. Others argued that humanity should not leap to militarize the cosmos, that the priority should be knowledge, understanding, and cooperation. Yet beneath those debates lay the common recognition that inaction was no longer defensible. 3I/Atlas had broken the illusion of isolation. From this moment forward, humanity was compelled to adapt to a galactic context. The confirmation did not just resonate in science and culture, it unsettled the imagination of ordinary people who had never thought of the cosmos as threatening, For generations, the night sky had been a source of wonder, of constancy. Now that same sky contained the reminder that unknown wanderers could descend at any time. Children who saw images of 3I/Atlas might grow up with a different relationship to the stars, one tinged with caution as much as with awe. The psychological shift was subtle but undeniable. It was the beginning of a new world view in which Earth was no longer a quiet backwater, but a vulnerable node in a galaxy of unpredictable motion. The strangeness of its behavior also fueled speculation in every corner of society. Its sudden surges of brightness, its odd rotational patterns, the eerie precision with which its jets seemed to vent, all of these invited interpretations ranging from the scientific to the sensational. Even as official voices stressed natural explanations, popular imagination drifted toward the possibility of purpose. The object became the subject of stories, debates, and myth-making. In online forums, theories sprouted daily, blending science with speculation in ways that reflected both curiosity and anxiety. The common thread was the acknowledgement that 3I/Atlas was not like anything else we had studied up close. It refused to behave in predictable ways, and that refusal itself was what made it terrifying. Yet there was beauty as well as fear. Astronomers described its tail as luminous beyond expectation, a shimmering veil of light and color that spread across the instrument's sensors like the brushstroke of another world. To study it was to witness the artistry of the galaxy itself, a fleeting display of how alien chemistry could create unexpected brilliance. Even those most gripped by fear found themselves awed by the spectacle. That paradox, of dread wrapped in beauty, was part of what made the event unforgettable. The confirmation also carried with it the weight of inevitability. If 3I/Atlas could arrive, then others could too. And with each new arrival, the odds of one with a direct collision trajectory increased. The fear that scientists had long tried to keep theoretical was now tangible. Not if, but when. That knowledge was not apocalyptic on its own, but it reshaped the horizon of human thought. It meant that survival was not a matter of willpower or politics alone. It was tied to forces larger than the planet, larger even than the solar system. To acknowledge that was to step into a new era of self-awareness, one where humanity's story could no longer be written without accounting for the wider galaxy's role. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the confirmation was the silence of the object itself. It carried no signal, no voice, no explanation. It simply moved, shedding material, rotating unpredictably, glowing against the blackness of space. The silence was its own kind of communication, a reminder that the universe does not explain itself, that meaning must be wrested from indifferent forces. The silence amplified the fear, because there was no dialogue to reassure, no narrative to soften the truth. The object was simply there, undeniable, unanswerable. And as it moved on, slipping back into the deeper currents of interstellar space, the implications remained anchored in human thought. The confirmation had done its work. It had changed how we see the solar system, how we imagine our future, how we measure our place in the cosmos. The fear it confirmed was not about one body alone, but about the pattern it represented. That pattern was now part of our reality, part of the human condition. The passage of 3I/Atlas had left a mark not on Earth's surface, but on human consciousness, a scar of awareness that would never fade. What made it so heavy was not disaster, but possibility. The possibility that alien chemistry might alter our world. The possibility that other interstellar travelers may come closer, strike harder, or bring with them mysteries more profound. The possibility that humanity's destiny is bound not only to our own actions, but to the drifting remnants of stars we have never seen. That was the heart of the fear confirmed. Not apocalypse in the moment, but the recognition that safety is an illusion, and that the universe is a place of ceaseless arrival. The confirmation that 3I/Atlas embodied exactly what had been feared did more than unsettle science or culture. It altered how humanity thought about motion, time, and survival itself. Each recorded observation became part of a story larger than any comet or asteroid before it, and that story kept stretching outward in scope the longer people dwelled on it. Even after the initial wave of shock, the implications continued to multiply, pressing into corners of thought that had rarely been explored. One of the deepest realizations was how this event reframed the concept of predictability. For centuries, astronomy had been the science of certainty. The movements of planets could be forecast centuries into the future, eclipses could be calculated with precision, and even the wandering of long-period comets was mapped in advance. Humanity had grown used to the idea that the cosmos was a clockwork, immense but comprehensible, every part governed by regularity. The arrival of an object from interstellar space undermined that trust. Its unpredictability was not a small deviation, but a fundamental challenge to the assumption that all motion within our skies could be anticipated. Suddenly, astronomy was less about assurance and more about vigilance. The shift from comfort to watchfulness was not temporary. It became a new condition of living under the stars. Another implication lay in the domain of technology. The need to monitor such arrivals more effectively exposed how fragile our observation infrastructure was. Existing telescopes had spotted 3I/Atlas only when it was already well into its journey through the inner solar system. The event revealed how blind humanity was to the larger galactic traffic passing outside those narrow fields of view. Engineers and visionaries began to calculate what would be necessary to close that gap. Fleets of automated observatories scattered through the solar system, deep space monitoring stations far from Earth's atmospheric interference, and artificial intelligence systems designed to track trajectories no human could calculate fast enough. The confirmation drove home the fact that survival depended not only on looking outward, but on building machines that could see further and faster than human eyes ever could. The discussion spilled over into geopolitics. Space had long been contested ground for prestige and resources, but the passage of 3I/Atlas reframed it as a question of survival that transcended borders. If interstellar bodies could arrive with little warning, then the entire planet was at risk, not just one nation or another. This realization pressed against the old habits of competition. Cooperative defense, shared observation networks, and cross-border communication became more than aspirations. They were necessities. Yet cooperation was not guaranteed. Some states saw in the event an opportunity to claim superiority, to position themselves as the protectors of humanity. Others sought to hold data tightly, treating it as leverage in a new era of cosmic risk. The confirmation of danger thus did not unite the world instantly, but exposed both the best and worst of human political instincts. The fear also touched the sciences of life in unexpected ways. Biologists considered how alien molecules in the dust shed by 3I/Atlas might interact with terrestrial ecosystems. The recognition that such particles could rain down, however thinly, was not dismissed as fantasy. Earth's history was marked by extinctions and renewals triggered by cosmic events, asteroid strikes, gamma-ray bursts, solar flares. To imagine that an interstellar object might deliver proteins, amino acids, or even exotic compounds previously unknown was not far-fetched. Some saw hope in this possibility, the chance to glimpse the chemistry of alien worlds, to test theories of panspermia directly. But others saw danger, envisioning molecular interactions that could destabilize delicate balances in Earth's biosphere. The confirmation that this object was volatile and actively shedding material made those possibilities harder to ignore. For philosophers and historians, the event took on the quality of an epical marker. Every civilization has its turning points, moments when the collective understanding of the world shifts irreversibly. The confirmation of the fears tied to 3I/Atlas was exactly such a moment. It was likened to the Copernican revolution, when humanity discovered it was not the center of the cosmos, or to Darwin's revelation of evolution, which showed that life itself was not fixed but unfolding. The passage of 3I/Atlas was another such humbling, a reminder that Earth's security was provisional, that history was written not only by human actions but by the wider cosmos. This realization carried both despair and inspiration, for it placed humanity within a much larger story than the one we usually tell ourselves. The aesthetic impact of the object also deepened as time passed. Artists, poets, and filmmakers transformed it into a motif of intrusion, the image of a glowing visitor tearing across the heavens. Some depicted it as a wound in the sky, a scar inflicted by the universe upon our illusions of permanence. Others saw it as a beacon, a reminder that beauty and terror often arrive together. The confirmation of its threatening potential gave such works an emotional charge beyond mere metaphor. The art of the time bore the stamp of a species grappling with an awareness that could not be unlearned. education too began to shift. Teachers used the story of 3I/Atlas to instill in students the dual lessons of humility and curiosity. Young people were told that the universe was not static, but alive with motion, and that survival would depend on learning, on building, on reaching outward with tools of understanding. The event became a teaching story, a parable of vigilance and adaptability. Generations who grew up in its shadow would likely carry a different relationship to space than those before them. Less romantic, perhaps, but more engaged, more willing to see exploration as necessity rather than luxury. Even the religious imagination absorbed the event. Some traditions interpreted the visitor as a sign, an expression of divine will reminding humanity of its limits. Others saw it as proof of the vastness of creation, a glimpse of mysteries too large for comprehension. Pilgrimages formed to observatories, where people gazed through telescopes, not just to see light reflected from ice and dust, but to contemplate their place in an order beyond human control. The silence of the object, its indifference, became a new kind of scripture, a wordless sermon about existence in an uncaring cosmos. Meanwhile, psychological research began to document how the confirmation affected individuals. Anxiety about cosmic threats, once confined to fringe communities, spread into mainstream consciousness. People reported vivid dreams of falling stars, of skies cracking open. Therapists noted how these dreams reflected deeper fears, not just of interstellar rocks, but of instability, of fragility in the systems of life and society. For some, the event sparked existential crises. For others, it became a catalyst for renewed appreciation of daily life. Both reactions were rooted in the same truth, the awareness that security is never absolute. The event also challenged science fiction itself. Writers who had long imagined alien ships, apocalyptic impacts, and interstellar messengers now found that reality had outpaced their inventions. 3I/Atlas was stranger than many imagined fictions because it carried no narrative, no explanation. It was pure enigma, stripped of human story, yet devastating in implication. Storytellers began to craft new tales, not of contact or conquest, but of uncertainty, of the silence that accompanies forces too vast to comprehend. In this way, the event reshaped not just science, but imagination itself. There was also a growing recognition that the event had exposed gaps in our ethics. If such visitors were to become regular, how should humanity treat them? Were they simply objects to be mined, studied, or redirected? Or did they represent something more, a kind of galactic heritage that required preservation? The ethical debates echoed those of earlier centuries about wilderness and species on Earth, but now the stage was cosmic. The confirmation of danger made these questions urgent because they were no longer abstract. The decisions made about 3I/Atlas would set precedents for encounters yet to come. Economics, too, could not remain untouched. The value of rare isotopes detected in its spectrum triggered discussions of whether such objects could one day be harvested. Investors imagined fleets of robotic miners sent to intercept interstellar bodies, extracting exotic materials never found on Earth. Yet the volatility of 3I/Atlas raised doubts. If such objects were unstable, could they be controlled, let alone exploited? The confirmation of risk complicated the vision of opportunity. Markets swayed between fascination with potential riches and fear of uncontrollable consequences. At a deeper level, the confirmation pressed upon the very definition of home. Earth had always been conceived as a bounded sanctuary, shielded by distance from external interference. 3I/Atlas fractured that conception. If interstellar objects could arrive, then Earth was not a fortress but a crossroad. The planet was not isolated but exposed, linked by invisible highways of gravitational passage to distant stellar nurseries and dying suns. To realize this was to redefine belonging itself. Home was no longer just the planet but the galaxy, in all its peril and possibility. The event also underscored the limits of language. Scientists struggled to describe its behavior without leaning on metaphors that hinted at agency. Words like aimed, chose, and targeted crept into descriptions, even though the body was inert. The human mind, built to see purpose, could not easily adapt to an object whose chaos felt intentional. This linguistic struggle highlighted how profoundly unsettling the confirmation was. It was not just a scientific anomaly, but a cognitive one, forcing people to confront the inadequacy of their categories. Even the discipline of law began to stir with new questions. If such an object threatened Earth, who had authority to act? Could one nation launch weapons at it? Did humanity need a planetary council to decide? The passage of 3I/Atlas revealed that no clear framework existed for planetary defense, much less for interaction with interstellar bodies. Lawyers and policymakers scrambled to draft guidelines, knowing that the next visitor might arrive before consensus could be reached. The confirmation of fear thus became a catalyst for building the structures of a truly planetary governance. The event also reawakened ancient myths. Cultures that once told stories of fiery sky visitors, of gods riding comets, of omens flashing through the night, found their tales suddenly relevant. Scholars noted how these myths reflected a deep ancient memory of cosmic vulnerability. 3I/Atlas reconnected modern humanity to those older truths, bridging the gap between ancient fear and modern science. It showed that the sky had always been a place of both wonder and danger, and that memory of that danger had never truly left us. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on 3I/Atlas? Fear confirmed or hype exaggerated? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.